Have you ever, spent ages getting that perfect prompt just right for an LLM, and then you find yourself having to type the same key instructions, maybe formatting stuff over and over again? Or even worse, you get these results that are all over the place, almost like the model just forgot what you told it 5 minutes ago. Yeah, it's a really common headache if you're trying to use AI seriously. We put in all this effort to get them to behave consistently. Well, today, we're actually diving into a technique that might just make all that repetition and inconsistency, well, maybe a thing of the past. We're talking about auto-priming for LLMs. It's a really insightful step forward in how we interact with these models. Our deep dive today pulls heavily from Macaulay Murugesan's work on advanced prompting techniques. And our mission really is to unpack what auto-priming is, but also, and this is key, why it's such a big deal for getting better, more reliable responses from LLMs, and doing that with hopefully way less manual effort on your part. It's more than just saving typing. It feels like it could change how we work with AI altogether.
Yeah, what's really fascinating here is how auto-priming just directly tackles that whole consistency and context issue. Basically, auto-priming is this technique where the language model gets, let's say, preconditioned. It gets fed a kind of persistent set of instructions or context or maybe some constraints before it even looks at your specific question. You can sort of think of it like setting up a baseline, an operating environment for the model that just stays active while you're talking to it.
Okay, so hang on. Is it just like a really long first prompt then? Because my first thought is, well, I could just jam all the instructions into my first message.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're saying this is different, something that sticks around and influences everything else maybe subtly, even if I don't see it. How does that preconditioning actually work? Especially for, people who already get things like context windows.
Right. That's exactly the difference. A long first prompt, sure, it sets the scene for that initial reply. But auto priming, it often taps into things like system messages or other bits of the architecture. These allow for a more permanent, maybe even dynamically updated set of instructions inside the model's working memory, its context window. So yeah, it's not just a one-off command. It's more like an always-on filter or guide. The memory isn't like human memory, obviously, but it's a set of core rules that get tacked onto every single turn of the conversation, kind of behind the curtains. It makes sure the model stays, aligned with what you want it to do or how you want it to sound.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot more sense now. So it's like the model has this internal checklist it keeps glancing back at. It's not just looking at the last thing I said. And the implications for, well, for you listening, anyone building with LLMs or just using them a lot, that seems huge. Instead of constantly reminding it about the format or the persona or the rules, auto-priming means that stuff just gets baked in automatically. That phrase you used, automatic contextualization, that really clicks now. It must make things way more efficient, cut down on the repetition, and just make the whole interaction smoother, more reliable.
Absolutely. And the efficiency thing, it's not just a nice to have. Think about a developer, maybe, or a content creator. Using an LLM to whip up, 50 articles or code snippets a day. If you save even just 30 seconds on each prompt because you're not repeating instructions, that's like what? Over 25 minutes saved right there every day. That adds up fast over a week. Hours saved. They can focus on the actual hard parts. It's operationally a big win. But there is a nuance here, isn't there? While auto-priming gives you that great consistency, does it maybe, kill some of the randomness, the creativity? Does it stop the model from coming up with something totally unexpected because it's too locked in? How do you balance consistency with serendipity?
Oh, that's a really good point. Is it a bit of a double-edged sword then if you prime it too hard? Does it get stuck in a rut? Does it lose its flexibility? Or can you design this priming to be more like gentle guidance instead of rigid rules?
That's a super important design question. Good auto-priming isn't about boxing the model in completely. It's about directing it smartly. Murugesan's work actually touches on this. It talks about different kinds or levels of priming. Like you could use persona priming, right? Make the LLM act like, say, a really skeptical professor or maybe an upbeat marketing guru. Or you could use constraint priming to make sure it follows specific rules, word counts, checking facts, ethical boundaries, things like that. And then there's stylistic priming for keeping the tone consistent or a certain writing style. The key thing is these aren't all mashed together. They can be distinct, configurable layers.
Okay, that distinction is powerful persona, constraint, style. It's not just one giant instruction dump. It's structured. Let's try a concrete example from the research to make this really clear for everyone listening. Say I'm an analyst, and I need the LLM to always act like a critical financial advisor when looking at company reports. And every single time, the output must be in a specific markdown table format. It always has to flag potential risks first and keep a very cautious, data-focused tone. How would auto-priming handle all of that compared to me just typing it all out manually every time?
That's a perfect, yeah, a really practical scenario. So manually, like you said, you'd be typing, act as critical financial advisor, focus on risks, use markdown table, cautious tone, every single time. Nightmare. With auto priming, you'd build those layers into that initial preconditioning step. The system message, the hidden instruction might say something like, you are a critical financial advisor. Primary goal, identify and explain risks in financial reports. Output must be a markdown table. Key insight, data point, potential risk opportunity. Maintain cautious, data-driven, objective tone, no speculative advice, something along those lines. Right, so once that's set up, that auto priming is active, your actual prompts become much simpler. You could just type, analyze the Q3 earnings for company X, that's it. And the model, because it's been preconditioned, it just automatically puts on the advisor hat, looks for risks first, spits out the markdown table, keeps the right tone. You've essentially programmed its behavior for that whole session without constantly repeating the rules. This is where Murugesen's work really shines, showing how you can combine these priming types for a really tailored, consistent result.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's way more impressive than just put it in a table.
Mm.
You can really see how you stack these things. But what about that trade-off we mentioned? If I've primed it to be this super cautious financial advisor, what happens if I suddenly ask it, I don't know, to write a poem or something totally unrelated? Does it get confused? Does it try to analyze the poem for financial risk?
Yeah, that's definitely something you have to think about when you design the priming. If it's done badly, it can overconstrain things. If your auto priming is too general or it stays active when you switch to completely different tasks, then yeah, you might get weird results. It might try to apply that cautious advisor persona to writing poetry and it'll just sound stiff or wrong. So the solution is often about making the auto priming specific to the task or maybe just for that session. For AI assistants that do lots of different things, you might need different priming profiles you can switch between, or maybe let the user override it easily. Murugesen's research really highlights needing clear boundaries, making it modular, so the model has different modes, not just one fixed setting.
Gotcha. So it's not like a magic bullet you just set up once and forget. It needs some thought, some design, almost like you're building a little specialized app on top of the LLM itself, which brings up a really important question for you listening. How does knowing about auto-priming change how you might approach prompt engineering, or even just how you think about AI agents in the future?
Well, for anyone who's building things with LLMs or really interacting deeply with them, understanding auto priming, it really shifts your thinking about prompts. You move away from just trying to craft the perfect single prompt each time and more towards designing these robust, reusable sort of interaction frameworks. You start thinking about the whole conversation, the user's end goal, and how you program the model's baseline behavior to consistently help achieve that goal. It means, ideally, less fiddling around with every single query and more strategic thinking up front. It basically empowers you to program the model's personality and its rules without actually writing complex code.
Yeah, it's like leveling up from just giving one-off instructions to actually setting up these persistent, smarter agents. You can see how useful that would be for businesses, right? Customer service bots that just know the brand voice, or research tools that always cite things the way your specific field requires. It really focuses on how we structure our request to get the best out of these incredibly powerful tools without that constant handholding. So just to wrap up our deep dive here, we've looked at auto-priming, not just the basic idea, but as a really quite sophisticated way to precondition these large language models. It's all about giving them that persistent context or persona or rule set, whether that's about style or facts or how the output looks. The goal is getting those consistently good, relevant results. And we saw how it goes beyond just basic prompting. Using those background mechanisms to keep the context live automatically saves huge amounts of effort, makes things more reliable. It's a fantastic example of the constant innovation that's happening in the LLM world, something Machikalai Murugesen's work has really illuminated.
And that does lead to a pretty interesting final thought for you to chew on. Consider this. If auto-priming lets us effectively program an LLM with a persistent personality and operating rules, making it a cautious financial advisor or a creative strategist for a whole session, What does that mean for the future? Could we see AI agents that maintain distinct identities or specializations over much longer time spans? How might these sort of invisible background contexts evolve? Could they become really complex, maybe even self-adjusting profiles, guiding AI behavior in ways that make working with them feel less like prompting and more like, well, collaborating with a genuinely specialized, consistent colleague who actually remembers what you're working on? It makes you think not just about what AI can do, but how we can actively shape its core way of operating.